Okay, welcome to this very short overview of realist approaches to crime and deviance as a summary or a recap of what we've covered. Now, so let's take a look at realism. Now, the main thing to be aware of, we're going to go through the left and the right approaches to realism because they do have differing views. And this is a little bit on the screen at the moment, just highlights realism generally, what they think. So realism takes crime seriously. That's the general nature of realism, whether it's left or right. They take crime seriously. They use official crime stats. They look at the data and they say that crime is growing, that crime is committed by the working classes. The working class are the victims and there is a fear of crime. So this is what they say to make themselves real about crime. They also try to provide practical solutions as opposed to other theories which kind of try to explain crime, but they don't actually provide any realistic or practical approaches to dealing with it. Now we're going to start with the left realism on the left-hand side of the screen, and they're generally associated with the work of New Labour. They take a look at the causes of crime, and that's what they want to tackle. And there's almost this hugger-hoodie mentality of, it is somewhat seen as they are seen, as victims of the system, and that's what leads to crime. So the main thing is that structural inequalities cause crime. The victim surveys show that there is a greater fear of mugging, there's more car crime, there's more burglary. Working class are the main perpetrators and the main victims. And this relates to the work of Lee and Young. There's key thinkers in this perspective. Now, when it comes to explaining crime, the main causes of crime from their perspective is relative deprivation, subcultures and working class people being drawn into subcultures, and marginalization and feelings of exclusion. So this does relate to other areas of the pack and the course so far. Relative deprivation, you feel like you lack something compared to someone else. Even if you may not be fully deprived, they have something you don't. So you feel a sense of loss and deprivation. We've seen the work of subcultures with Merton, Cloud Nolan, Cohen, Miller, Matzer, and we know why there are different explanations for young people joining them, and this comes back here. Young people join subcultures because of a sense of loss and lacking. And lastly, marginalization, which did appear a little bit in functionalism and other theories, that if you feel isolated on the edge, separate from society, then you may turn to crime. If you feel there's no point following the rules if you're not included in society. So these are the main causes of crime. The response that Labour puts forward is trying to tackle and deal with the causes. So more democratic policing in an area to reduce crime, to build better relationships with communities, to increase community policing and monitoring of young people, to build a better relationship so there's less of a them and us relationship between sort of young people and the police. Improving clear-up rates, so again, improving the amount of crimes that are solved and solved quickly, again, would act as a deterrent. This is similar, and it does overlap a little bit with rights realism. And also, as I say, relationships are key. So this is putting more money into schools, into community projects, to increase welfare spending, to reduce those causes, to reduce deprivation, whether it's real poverty or perceived deprivation, is to build better relationships, to encourage people away from gangs, give them a sense of worth, and obviously to make them feel included in society. And the main tackles to crime is the structure. So formal social control, so how we define laws, how relationships exist within the police. We need better public and informal social control, community involvement. We need to think about the role of the victim. Who are victims and why do they become victims? So there is an element of self-responsibility. And same with the offender. Who becomes the offender and why? Now, from left realism, we've explained why people turn to crime. On the opposite side, we have the right realists. Now, they're tough on the criminal. So whereas left realism is more about preventative and preventing people turning to crime in the first place, right realism is very much after facts event. So once someone has committed a crime, you punish them. You put policies in place that make it harder to commit a crime rather than reduce the need to commit crime. So we have left, which is about preventative measures to reduce crime before it happens and turn people away from crime. Right realism is more about punishing the offender and making it tougher to commit a crime in the first place. So two different ends of the criminal justice process. Now, their explanation of crime is slightly more different. So they talk about the value consensus. Criminals break the value consensus. They threaten social order. And there's a link to single-parent families and self-fulfilling prophecies and some of the arguments we've looked at before. People are selfish. That's their sort of summary. People are selfish. They will do what they need to. They will take what they want. They will always try to benefit themselves. Community control is weak. That needs to be strengthened to reduce crime, which does overlap with left realism. They do say community involvement is key. And criminals make a choice. Now, again, left realism almost takes this idea that the criminals are victims of circumstance, which lead to criminal activity. Right realism says that criminals have chosen to do this. They've made a rational choice to commit a crime. Therefore, if they get arrested, that's their fault. They have chosen to commit a crime. They've not been forced into it. And they also recognise that crime will never go away. It always exists, which does have similarities with some of the theories of functionalism, that crime will always be around. Now, their solution, they want to stop crimes, crime prevention rather than dealing with the causes. So zero tolerance policing, target hardening, making stuff harder still. We see a lot of situational crime prevention, like designing crime out of an area. We look at stuff like broken windows thesis and work of Wilson and Kelling. So by improving an area with more CCTV, with repairing damage, it detracts further crime developing. So their solution to tackle crime: stricter socialisation on young people, teaching them right and wrong, stricter community control. So this was referred to, I think, by David Cameron as the big society. So getting people involved in society, making them a stakeholder, that reduces crime. We need heavier policing, zero tolerance approaches, and, as I mentioned before, situational crime prevention. Now, similarities between the two and their relative points. The main link I want to flag up is that both recognise the community, as mentioned, both ignore white-collar crime. Left realism is quite good because it recognises the causes of crime. It recognises that victims are often working class, though the working class commit crimes against other working class. But it doesn't really look at relative deprivation and marginalisation anymore. So, only focuses on particular causes of crime and other ways people respond to relative deprivation, marginalisation. It also relies on a victim survey. Now, again, this is the victim saying what they've been a victim of. This can be exaggerated. It isn't always the most reliable method of survey. Right realism, on the other hand, is quite good for looking at, it does explain social causes, in a very general way. It does recognise that small crimes lead to big crimes, but it does ignore the structural causes that the left realists highlight. The zero tolerance approach to crime and rational choice does not explain all crime. So violent crime, people do not make a rational choice to commit violence. There is no financial profit or gain from violent crime. Now, top 5 summary points, just to begin wrapping up. So realists recognise that there is more crime in society. Working class are the offenders and the victims, and they offer effective solutions to crime and deviance. Right realism is associated more with the conservative political perspective and focuses on punishments and controlling crime. We see Cornish and Clark, who are right realists, talking about rational choice and reducing this by bringing in stuff like target hardening, zero tolerance policing, or the broken windows theory. Left realism, more associated with New Labour, is more about dealing with the causes of crime, the preemptive approach. So looking at improving housing, employment, education, community involvement, offering resources to young people to deter them from crime. And last but not least, the questions, example questions. Now, realism as a two-sided approach, you have the left and the right. It's quite almost forms its own two-sided debate. So a lot of the questions will almost, in some respects, kind of be presented in this way. So particularly looking at that 30 mark at the bottom here. So the usefulness of the realist approaches to crime. So in this case, we talk about how left realism and right realism are useful. What are they not useful for? We would also bring in other theories like functionalism, Marxism, and criticise realism. 10 markers this is more to looking at this particular question, looking more at right realism, so strategies of crime prevention, situational crime prevention, and how they may or may not be effective. Some of the measures right realists use, like often displace crime, they move it to another area. They don't truly tackle the cause, they just move it to somewhere else. And then short questions, again, these were similar to some of the ones we touched on already. So 2 causes of crime from the realist approach. So you could give a left realist and a right realist explanation of crime, or 2 left or 2 right. And then 3 ways in which crime and deviance or crime can be controlled via surveillance. So this is not solely related to realism, but I thought there were elements of realism we could bring in, such as situational crime prevention, target hardening, zero tolerance policing, and community involvement. Okay, there we have it. So a short overview of realist approaches to crime. I hope you found this useful. You have your packs, textbooks, and other resources to use. And if you still are uncertain about any elements of this topic, please get in touch with your teachers. Otherwise, thank you for listening and have a good day.